let's start by working with gradients and then animating gradients. Close that. Just create a brand new file. At any time, when your desktop gets really cluttered, the easiest thing is to go to Window, and we can come down here to Workspace, and we can go back to the default workspace. Maybe icons with text, whatever works for you. Notice how it cleans everything up. And you may recall one of the first times I introduced this, you can also customize it and make your own workspace. Okay, so what if you wanted to animate or apply a gradient, create your own gradient, and then animate it? So let's start by creating an oval, like so. And it has a black stroke, it has a green fill. I can click here in the fill bucket if I wish, and I can also select from swatches, and you'll notice that there's some default swatches down here. Now I can click with the fill bucket, and wherever you click, notice that that's the center of the fill. See how it changes position? And because it's a radial gradient at the moment, it looks somewhat like a sphere. At the same time, I think I'm going to remove the stroke. I don't have to, but hold on here just 1 second. There we go. So to edit this, this is a shape object, right? What if I wanted to change the position, the properties of the gradient? To do that, under here is the third tool down. There's the free transform tool, and there is the gradient transform tool. When I select the gradient and I click, notice the new widget that appears. I can move it from the center. That's one way of changing the position of it. I can resize it to make it narrow. I can make it broad, so you're changing the appearance of the gradient here. I can rotate the gradient and resize it using this one and using this one. Okay. And then when I'm done with it, I go back and I've changed my gradient. So that allows me to edit an existing gradient inside here. What if I wanted to apply a different gradient to this? I can select it, and again you can use the fill bucket. And I can select another gradient, blue, and notice how it just changes the color, or I can change green, go back to red. So it's applying that gradient fill. But if I want to come back and change the properties of it and use the fill bucket, notice that it goes back to the default properties of a radial gradient. Now what I can also do is I can go to Window, and we can look at, where is the gradient? Am I looking right at it? Should be under my Window menu here. Let me select color. There we go. Just the color panel. I should pull it off so you can see that when you have a gradient selected, you'll notice all the other color properties that you have with the regular color. But in addition to that, you'll see the color bar at the bottom. So what if I wanted to create my own little custom color or my own custom gradient? All you have to do is click in between the two colors, and it creates a color automatically in between. Now I can come up here and I can select from the color picker, or I can put in RGB, and notice how that color and that point changes. Now I have a brand new custom color, or custom gradient. See what I've done? Well, anytime I select this object, this gradient will always come up, but what if I want to add that color or that gradient to my menu or my palette? Notice that with this gradient selected, and this would be true for any color, that when you move over the blank space, that it turns into a fill bucket. And when I click there, notice that it's added that to my swatch panel. Something that I haven't talked about, and I really went over a lot of this stuff very quickly, but you can export swatches. You can also import swatches in a couple of different file formats. So if you want to use the flyout window up here, you can always save colors, okay? And when you save them, it will ask you, do you want it to be saved as a flash color set or .clr? So anytime in the future somebody else is using Flash and you want to make sure that everybody, if you're working on a team project, everybody's using the same colors, have them open up that palette. So that's one way of saving it. The other one is the ACT, and that would be for Photoshop. So if you wanted to take and export your color palette over to Photoshop, so that if somebody else is using Photoshop, or you are, and you're editing the colors over there, you can do that as well, so that you have cross-platform, you just move it over and it turns into a fill bucket, and you click. Didn't work. Make sure that you have the gradient, the object selected. If it's not selected when you move over, oh, I guess it did do it. Well, now I can click here. And I want to remove this, so, okay. Now is it working?
Yeah, you have to click it and dump it in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, by default, some of these gradients are radial, but you can also use linear gradients, and you'll see how they change. Notice how it changes from left to right, top to bottom. And again, when I select the tool that allows me to adjust gradients, notice the difference. Radial goes from the center out. Linear is just that. It's linear. It goes from left to right, top to bottom, or diagonally. And we can switch back and forth, and I can switch back to radial. Notice what it does. And I can again. What's that?
These will just stay in there?
They'll stay in that file. Yes, they will not go away when you close the file. But if you want to use, if you create a brand new file and you want to use them, it's not like the library, where if you have multiple libraries open and you can access them, you wouldn't be able to access that unless you exported your color palette and then imported it to that other file. Well, let's say you wanted to, let me go back with the fill bucket again. I want to fill this. Let's say you wanted to animate the gradient. Well, at the moment, because we have a shape fill, well, before I go on animation, does this make sense to everybody? How to, the different kinds of gradients, how to access them, how to create your own custom gradients, how to save palettes, how to export them, how to import them. So what if I wanted to animate this? And that could be very doable. What I can do, again, let's say I want to create the appearance. So I'm going to ask my two questions. What do I want to happen? I'm going to create the appearance that the position of the light is changing. So that gradient would change position over time. Right now, anybody have basic drawing class? When you look at the, when you look at a gradient like this, you can tell, because this is the hot spot, that at about a 45-degree angle, my light source would be up here. Well, what if I want to change it, make it look like the light source has moved down to here, and have that change? Okay? Well, just by selecting the shape object now and deciding I'll use my 1 second rule, because that's the second thing that I said you needed to ask yourself, how much time takes place? So I want 1 second, because I'm using 20 frames per second. I will insert timeline keyframe. And by doing that, it keeps the position of the ball intact. And the only thing that will change now will be the gradient. So by using the gradient edit, I'm just going to move the center of it down here. So in the first keyframe, it's up here, and the second one, it's down here. Right? Now all I have to do is apply a tween. What kind of tween do I apply? It's a shape object, so it's a shape tween. Switch from none to shape. And now we can scrub through here. Notice how it changes. And now I can go to Window, or rather Control, Test Movie. Notice how it changes over time. It's as simple as that. Now, here's another feature. So I'm going to go ahead and undo a few steps. And I'm just going to go ahead and fill this right in the middle, like so. And I'm going to make copies of this. Quickest way to make a copy, and this would be true in Photoshop and Illustrator, a number of programs, is to use key commands. To select the object, hold down the Option key, and you make and drag, and you make an exact copy, an exact duplicate. And I do that again, I make another one. So now I have 3 of them, don't I? And they each have their own gradient. But if I hold down the Shift key and I select all 3, and I use the fill bucket again, and I click here, notice what just happened. One gradient fills all 3 separate objects now. Okay, why would I want to do that? Because I'm going to do what I call the Knight Rider effect. You know, everybody remember that silly television show? Knight Rider? Okay. So let me do this again. Let me make these a little bit smaller, and we'll get a better feel for this. So I'll select the sphere tool, or the circle tool, and I'll make a nice one with a gradient inside, and we'll use the red. And I'll select it, and I'll hold down the Option key, and I'm going to make a series of copies. Now I'll make sure that they're all selected, and I will use the fill bucket again up here and click so that it's in the center. Now the single gradient fills the whole thing. Now I want to animate between these. So again, I decide I'm going to go from frame 1 to frame 20, and I'm going to insert timeline keyframe. And I want to make sure that the editor is selected here. When I select this, see how big that is? Maybe I want to resize it. That might be a bad idea. So this is much smaller, maybe even smaller yet. Each of these widgets does slightly different thing. Stretch this out a bit more, okay? So this is the end. That's the beginning. Actually, I'm going to undo this a few times. I goofed. I wanted to change the first one, and I probably should have done that first. Never mind. You have to remember what you're doing. Think about what you're doing here, and I missed the boat. So let me just take this frame and modify it, transform it on timeline, and what I want to do is clear keyframe, so that's gone. Select this one, and I want to edit the. It's important that I do it this way because it's really based on what I've done in the first keyframe. I want this to move across and then back and forth. So there's my first keyframe. Now I select frame 20, and I insert timeline keyframe. And now I take this one and I move it down here like so. Why aren't you doing that? Let's do this again. Click again. There we go. So now it's down here now. So this is my first keyframe. This is my last keyframe. Apply a tween and watch what happens. Shape tween. Now let's go ahead and test it. Okay, but realize what it's doing. It plays 1 through 20 and it jumps back to 1 again. What if I want it to go back and forth? Flash provides some really useful tools for you to be able to copy frames and then invert the order of those frames or inverse the order of those. So, and that's really what you want to do. To do that by hand takes work. And then there's no guarantee what you do will be really accurate. So I want it to go back and forth and back and forth into a loop. So this is how you do it. You first select all the frames that you want to copy and you want to inverse or invert. Inverse, invert.
This is a tween shape, right? Tween shape.
Shape tween, right. Shape object, shape tween. That's the only time you use that. So now I want to make a copy of these frames. To do that, I can click and drag, and as I drag it, I hold down the Option key. And when you hold down the Option key, notice a little plus sign below the arrow. That indicates that I am copying those frames, and wherever I release the mouse, I now have a copy. But if I scrub through this, all I'm doing is repeating what I had. But if I click and drag and select and highlight these frames, I can go to Modify, Timeline, and what I want to do is reverse frames. Now when I play it, I hit Command, Return, watch. Goes back and forth. So there's a lot of things that you'll want to do that you'll want to have it play back and forth into kind of a loop. That's done a lot. So we've introduced a couple of things today. We've talked about gradients, how to apply gradients, how to edit gradients, and now how to animate gradients. And then in addition to that, how to reverse frames using Shape Tweens. So that's a lot.
Can you repeat? I'm sorry, I missed the step, copying the timeline, the key frames.
Yeah, how to copy and how to edit frames can be really tricky. So let me undo this and do it again. Let me undo a few steps. Actually, what if I wanted to get rid of these frames? And this is tricky. You have to edit these, because if I click from here, it selects all of them. I don't want to remove all of them. I only want to remove half of them. So if you make sure that no frames are selected by clicking off them, that works. And then what you have to do is you click and drag in one fell swoop. You don't click, release, and drag, because that will move the frames. So it's click and drag, and that highlights just those frames. Now I can go to Edit Timeline, and I can select Remove Frames, and now they're gone. Okay, now if I wanted to copy these again, because there's, yes?
The timeline still stay gray. What does that signify?
Out here? Or?
After you said remove, it was still gray. until you click out of it. What does that
It was just a transition, I think, is all.
Okay,
But it didn't.
that you can come back. Can you come back to it as the gray? Or?
No, once they're gone, they're gone. You can undo that. If I could hit Command Z, I can, it just means that these frames were highlighted. So if I click and drag here, they're highlighted, and I can paste frames into that, edit, do whatever I want. But these are unoccupied frames. They're potential frames. They're not even a part of our project right now. Does that make sense? They could be used in our project, but they're not. We have a project of only 20 frames right now. It plays frame 1 to 20 and it repeats. But it's a good habit to try to practice moving and editing frames, because it is tricky. To highlight these, because no frames are selected, I can click and drag and highlight all the frames. But watch what happens. If I click and that one is highlighted, and then I release the mouse and I click and drag, notice all I did was move that frame. And now what that did, it left frames 1 through 19 as a blank keyframe. I didn't want to do that. So again, make sure that no frames are selected. Click and drag to highlight. It's one fell swoop. Click and drag. But if you click release, and then that frame is highlighted, and then you click and drag, then what happens is that you move the frame. And you can do lots of weird things when you do that. Now to answer your question, to make a copy of it, while the frames are highlighted, as soon as I click and I drag, notice it begins to move them. But as I'm moving them, if I hold down the Option or Alt key, notice how the icon changes with a little plus sign beneath it. That means I'm in fact copying them. It's the quickest, most efficient way to do it. You could also copy paste, but I think that takes too much work.
I did that, but when I played it, there was no animation.
Well, when I play this now, it should just play across, play across, play across. It's not reversing, because all I did was copy the same order. Now what I want to do is I want to click and drag to select these frames, go to Modify, Timeline, and reverse the order. So now when it plays across, and then these really are duplicate frames. Now it plays back, and then this frame is a copy of this. Okay. Make sense? Okay. Want me to move on to type, edit to animating type? Okay. And by animating type, we'll reintroduce graphic symbols again. So I'm going to create a new file, ActionScript 3. Now, there are a variety of ways that you can do this, but somebody suggested the other day that they wanted it to look like a typewriter was, you were typing with a typewriter so that the type was appearing. You don't need to convert the type to a symbol to do that. That's basically frame by frame animation. If you wanted that animation to be readily available to just drag out onto the stage, it would have to be contained inside a symbol to do that. But to do that frame by frame, just first select your first frame and click the type tool. And we're going to use static text. I'm going to make sure that it has a nice black fill. And impact is a nice good one. I don't know that I want 96 point, but even, yeah, why not? No, I'll make it a little bit smaller. 54. So I'll type my name, K. Whoops, come on. Okay. And I can move all of these later. So that's the first one. And then I'll click the next frame. And this is similar to what we did when we animated our name, but using the brush tool. It's really no different. Now what I can do is insert timeline. What do I want? A keyframe or a blank keyframe? And I'll explain why in a minute. I want a keyframe because I just want to copy the last one. Now I can click here. And this is copied the same position as before. Now I can add an I. But I have one problem. I have the type from the center. And that's, now watch when I toggle back and forth. See how it moves the position of it? I don't want that. So I just realized the goof. So I'm going to go back and select this and make sure that it's from flush left. I want it like a typewriter. It starts from the left and moves to the right. If you wanted it to appear from the center outward, and that's the kind of animation you wanted, or from the right to the left, you can do that too. So I'll select frame 2 again, insert timeline keyframe, and we'll click here with the type tool right next to the K, and I'll apply my I. And I'm going to select the next frame again and insert timeline keyframe and click again, and I will insert the R, and I'm just going to keep repeating this. Next frame, select the next frame, insert a keyframe, and add a letter, add a letter, add a letter. Insert timeline keyframe. Let's go back. That's right. This one needs to be a K now, right? Okay, there we go. Can't think, and now I can also do a space, so I can insert timeline keyframe and insert a space here. And whoops, I didn't want to. Oh no, no, no! Oh no! Oh, stop, stop! Oh no, no! Why is it doing that? What have I got doing here? No, that's what's surprising. Jeez Louise. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Yeah. What's going on here?
Each space is one space.
There, I just want one space. Okay, so let's insert timeline again. Keyframe. Now I'll put M. Insert timeline keyframe. Click again with the type tool. I insert timeline keyframe. Actually, you know what? I should be using my key commands. If I hit F6, it's not there, but that inserts another keyframe. And I click again, another L, and then I hit F6 again. F7 is a blank keyframe. F6. I hope I did this right. We'll see. You have to pay attention to what you're doing here. And maybe I'm not. So let's go back here and let's scrub through here. And then if I want, I could select all these and just move them forward one. So the first one is a blank keyframe. Now let's go ahead and play this. And it's probably crashed. Oh, don't, please. There we go. Now, what if I wanted to slow this down? What would I do? I would add frames, right? So I could select this frame. I could even select here, and let's go ahead and hit F5 a few times. And that inserts some frames. Click whatever keyframe I want. If you wanted to change the pace of it so it looks like you're actually typing, then you would have fewer or greater number of frames in between. So it would, yeah, and then you could add, in fact, I don't know if I still have them, but there are some typewriter sounds, and it would sound like somebody's typing. Yeah. So, yeah, I used to too, so I don't know if I still do. You could save it as a QuickTime movie, and then you could take the QuickTime and bring that into Final Cut, sure. Anyway, you see what I'm doing here. Let me go to Control and Test Movie. See how it slowed down, picks up. So that's one way. That's animating type, but not how I was thinking of animating type. What I wanted to do is to emphasize that if you were going to change the color of type over time, if you were going to change the alpha, meaning the transparency of type over time, the size, rotate it, do whatever you want, those properties, it needs to be inside a symbol. So, no, you don't have to use break apart. That's the advantage to doing it the way I'll show you now. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those frames, and we're basically going to start over with a blank keyframe. I'm going to start with some text. And I'm just going to start in, again, maybe use my name here. And whoops, let's use Lubalin. That's not bad. Okay. So this is editable text, and I want to have this move, you know, maybe enter off stage, come on stage, and then appear. Does that make sense? And then stop, and then maybe go off stage. Now in CS4, they have lots of animation, like built-in animations that you can apply that do just this, that are nice effects. Now that I said it, you go, well, gee, where is it on my computer? It's not there. Well, so to do this, though, this has to be converted or put inside a symbol. So we'll go to Modify, and we will convert to symbol. And when I convert to symbol, a graphic symbol, we'll just name it Kirk. So I know it's my name. And watch how it changes. See, you no longer see the little anchor points in the corner, and you see the blue bounding box, and you see the crosshair in the center. Okay, well that lets me know, and also if I look down at Properties panel, this is a graphic symbol, and you'll also notice in my library I have a graphic symbol named Kirk. What if I want to edit this? What if I want to put my middle initial in there? Is it too late? No. Because remember, when you put elements inside symbols, they're like that little Russian doll that I said. All you're doing is putting it in a container. If I double click on this, notice here, I'm no longer in the scene, I'm inside the graphic symbol Kirk. I can select the text tool, click, and I can type B, and I can go back out, side, and now I've edited it. Okay? So, as I explained, in order to animate this over time, what I want it to do is I'm going to have it start over here so it's off stage. So this is the first keyframe, so I can move it off stage like so. Now I want it to move across to the center, and then I'm going to have it fade out, and as it fades out, it moves across to the right. I could have it spin around, I could have it change color as it's doing that, you could have it change scale. There's all kinds of properties that can be changed, but yeah. Yeah.
But to me, that selection is grayed out. Do you know why that would be?
Because you probably don't have anything selected. You need to select something to convert it to a symbol.
No, it's still grayed out on the selection.
What do you have selected?
This way.
Did you, well, let me see.
Do you know why that would be grayed out?
Oh, because you have all of the text selected. It wants to edit it.
Oh,
You need to select this tool.
oh,
Now you can go to modify,
okay,
convert to symbol.
okay.
If I have the cursor selected inside the text box, it will not allow me to convert to symbol. You have to change and use the selection tool in order to do that and make sure that it's selected from here, not inside the type tool. So I asked myself, what do I want it to do? I want it to move across the stage. I use my 1 second rule, and if I need to change it, I can. So I'm going to modify. I'm sorry. Insert timeline keyframe. So all it does is it copies the last one. And now I can take at this point in time and move it across. Okay. Now we can click in here and we can apply a tween. What kind of tween do we apply? Motion, right. Because it's a symbol. And that looks good. So it's just going to scrub across, and then let's say I want it to stop for 2 seconds. How would I have it just pause for 2 seconds?
Insert an action.
Don't need to do that.
Apply more keyframes in between.
Just have to insert frames. That's it. Click on frame 60, because that would be 2 seconds, and hit F5, and that just inserts frames. So it stays put for 2 seconds. Now at this point in time, I want it to move again. I'm going to have it move off. So what I will do here is insert another keyframe because it's ready to move away. So once again, I will insert timeline keyframe. And by inserting the keyframe here, what it's doing is it's taking this one and copying it and putting it here. Now I'm ready to move it off stage. So what I will do is go to frame, and I'll use the 1 second rule. Go to frame 80, and again, insert timeline keyframe, and I will move it off. And now at this point, I want it to have faded away. So to have this fade away, since this is a symbol, I can come down to my properties panel, select alpha, and notice how it's faded away to nothing. And now watch what I can do. I'll go back and I'll select in here, apply a tween inside these 2 keyframes. So let's go ahead and play this now. Okay. If I want to slow it down or speed it up, I can change the distance between frames. There's also something else we can do. And I should probably do that anyway so you can see what's going on. Okay. So let me close this. Now, to increase or slow this down, all I need to do is click on this keyframe and drag it. And now I've slowed it down. It takes twice as long to cross the stage as it did before. Likewise, I can take this one and I can move it. Whoops, need to click first and drag. And I probably want to still keep this at 2 seconds. I'm sorry, I'll be back in a minute. Oh, no, I don't even know who this is. Forget it. Okay, so let's scroll down or move down on my timeline a little bit. And let's click and drag and move this to 120. Okay. So I've slowed all this way down. Okay. Now, something else that you can do when you apply tweens. Okay. You can do something called easing in and easing out. What that does is that if you ease in, it starts slow and it speeds up towards the end. If you ease out, what it does is it starts out fast and then it slows down. And you can control that here by clicking in between. All you have to do is click in between. So if I go ahead and push that to 100, and then I come in here and I push this to a -100 to exaggerate it on either end. Let's see what happens. I mean, maybe you will notice it, maybe you won't. See how it slowed down at the very end? So it's like coming to a slow stop and then it started to speed up. So you have those features too, to ease in and ease out. And that's true for any motion tween, not just with type. I mean, what I'm doing is important for type, but it also, any kind of, to show you that you have to, or you should put type in a symbol in order to animate it. See how it looks like it's coming to a slow, gradual stop, and then it's like a train, and then it's picking up speed. And so that's what the ease in and ease out does.
And why do you have to put it in symbol?
Because it won't work if you don't.
Okay. Because
The other one I did frame by frame animation, so it wasn't really animating the type. I was just animating frame by frame. In order to animate the type, to do what I'm doing, I'm actually having it move over time. I'm having the alpha change over time. I'm also applying an ease in, ease out feature. To apply those three features, the only way that can be done is to put it inside a symbol.
and how do you get the symbol onto your page? Now you've gone into that little symbol and created it. Can you redo that?
If I just wanted, when I'm done here, okay, what if this slides off, but then what if I wanted to, when it was done, after it went off, I just wanted my name to appear. Boom.
Yeah.
Okay? So what I can do is I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to come over here. Let's go right to here. And what I'm going to do is insert, I'm going to insert a blank keyframe. So that's a placeholder. And I want to see where I place that last, my middle frame. So I can do so by using onion skinning, can I? And this is where I want to see back in time. I want to see back here. This is where it gets a little confusing. And I don't want to see any of this, actually. Oh, what the heck. Let me turn onion skinning off. I just want to place it here. There might be an easier way to work. I think there is. What I was going to say is that you can just drag this out on stage. There, you got a copy of it. That's the symbol. But to place an exact copy of it there, an easy way to do that would probably be to select this frame, to copy it, and then to come down here and say edit and say paste in place, so that it's in the same position. And then when that's done, it pops. And then for this to stay for several frames, again, you'd come down here, and hit F5. And now when we play it, we go to Control, Test Movie. Okay. And let's say we wanted it to change color over time. We can do that. We can come down here. Let's say at this point in time I want it to change, let's see. Let's change the tint to a blue. See how it's changing? And then here, let's see what color that is. It's 102,255. So if I want that to remain when I go here, I would do the same thing. I would select this. I would select tint. I still have it remembered the same color, but then maybe I want it to go back to black again when I come down here. So we'll switch again. We'll select this, and I want it to change tint, and I want it to be black. So I'll switch back to black. So it's going to morph from blue to black as it's going across. Okay, so let's try again. See how it was transitioning from black? And now it went from blue back to black.
You can apply a gradient as well because it's in a symbol.
No. You want to put the gradient inside the type?
Yeah.
Different animal. You can do that, but it can then no longer be editable text. You would have to, everybody hear the question? You want to put a gradient inside the text. And if you want to animate the gradient inside the text, that is doable. But what you would have to do is you would have to use break apart to convert the text to outlines. Make sure all the shapes were selected. If you wanted a separate one gradient inside all letter forms, apply the gradient and then edit the gradient inside. That would be doable. And that's done a lot too. A lot. Well, you tell me what I should review, what you're still confused about, or you want to be elaborated. Because what I would like to do is to give you your first assignment. And that would be to do a simple ad. And what I want you to do is use from some of the existing templates that they provide for you. You can use any size you want as long as it's from one of those templates. The subject of the ad is up to you. Meaning if you want to do one for yourself, is a promotion. If you want to do one for Cerritos, is a promotion. Because Valentine's Day is coming up, if you want to do one to commemorate Valentine's Day, you could do that. If there is an ad for a company that you're planning on doing a website for that you would like to do a simple ad, you could do that. But it needs to incorporate type, and it needs to incorporate some animation. And for samples, just look on the internet. They're all over the place. You know, there's lots and lots of ads. As to the different formats, to find those, you go File, New. And we're going to select from Templates. And you can see in Category under Templates, Advertising. And you'll see all the different sizes here. We have the vertical skyscraper that you'll see on people's blogs and on news, digital news papers. Typically on the left or the right. Here's another skyscraper that's a little bit wider. Here's more of a rectangular shape, which is generally easier to work with. Another rectangle, more a little bit vertical. For pop-ups, more rectangles, transitional. Banner 1 is the traditional one. This is the one that existed by itself for a long time, the ones that you see along the top. And that is a standard size, 468 by 60. How did they come up with that size? I do not have a clue. Not a clue. But these are the standard sizes that are used on the internet. So I want you to, you can work with any one of these sizes and create your animation. Now, it might be worthwhile for a second going out and looking at some. So let me go ahead and go to Safari, and I'm going to look, because I look at the Pasadena Star News every day. Let's click here. And let's see what kind of ads they have, what they use to generate revenue. They probably will have something across the top, and they'll probably have something over here. Yeah, here's one here. This went very quickly, which isn't so hot. Yeah, see how it loops? It's not very complicated. I would hope you guys would do something a little bit more innovative. These are kind of hokey. And later on, if you wanted to get to that for low interest rates, see how these guys move around? And actually, you can have them so it traces your mouse. So that's one place. How about some other ones? If we were to go, here's one. Yeah, it's okay, but they got to pay somebody to do that. Here's some more. Probably don't even pay attention to these anymore. I know I don't. I know that they're there, but I don't. And it's pretty basic. It's just they're moving things around. Some are pretty elaborate. Some change alpha over time. Some change colors. Some, like these, are kind of herky-jerky. But if we look long enough and hard enough, you'll find some pretty interesting ones. How long does it need to be? You know, I think maybe 80, 100 frames. If it's longer, if it's shorter, doesn't matter. As long as it does the job. So this one has sound. Okay, that would be annoying. Where else can we go? Let's go to sports and see what we have in here. Scores and stats. Let's just jump to this page and see. Oh, no advertising. I'll be done. Okay. Oh, here's one for ARP. There we go. So it looks like a box is turning in space. With CS4, you'll be able to do that. Create the illusion of 3D. I don't know. That's a good question. If they are the same, I don't know. I don't know. Another popular website. Go ahead and give me one, and we'll look at some others. See if we can't find some that are interesting. Do you have any favorite websites that you go to? Huh? DreamWorks? Now, they might have some ads, if you want to call them that, to promote their company. Let's see what they have here. I can also show you, some of you have asked also, I mean, I showed you the project that I did in Flash, but a friend of mine has a company in New York, and you can see what he's done for his. I may have shown it. Now, for whatever, theirs is taking forever to load. Yeah. Yeah, this is kind of going to be like Disney's, I think. It's going to be, I find this to be a nuisance. We have a pretty fast connection, though, so I'm there. They lost me. We're gone. I'm going to put in, no, I'm gone. I got to think. Eyesight. No, it's not Eyesight. It's Foresight Inc. Trying to remember the name of his company. ForesightInc.com. There we go. And this is pretty traditional in the sense that people do warn you, some do, some don't, that in order to view his website, you need Flash Player. And if you don't, then click here. It takes you to Adobe's website. You download Flash Player to be able to see it. When you click, all it does is it brings up his piece in a little pop-up menu. Okay, a little bit of animation. So we can click here to look at profile of his company. And it's similar in many respects to what I did. You know, you have little chapters, and then within the chapters, different pages. Look at the process of his work, the work itself, the different kinds of work, product development. And we can look at all these different products. He owns the company, so I don't know how much he's hands-on right now, but his background was product design. And packaging. So he would design vessels, you know, and this is what his company does. They design the new Gatorade bottles and things like that. So, very successful guy. Pepsi. Lipton. So this is all, it's just a pop-up, and then this is a flash piece inside it. So that's how he chooses to they choose to show their work. And if you want a list of their clients, if you want to contact them, and then oftentimes people will have different ways of doing this where you have to put in a password if you want to see your own, you know, work that's being done for you and no one else is around. So something is goofed up here. So. It's interesting to see, you know, I mean, I've known him for a long time over the years how the business has changed in his industry. Just like ours, everything has moved towards the computers, so has his. You know, initially when you're developing packaging and you were developing products, you'd start with your marker sketches and everything. And then you would do some tight renderings, and then a model maker would actually fabricate an image of the model, you know, I mean a 3D model of it. Well, now it's all done on the computer. And they have one of those 3D printers, you know. I don't know what else to call them, you know, that after it's built in the computer, they press a button and it prints it out in plastic, but in 3D. It's actually a three-dimensional model of it. And that is also used, the program that they use. They used to use Alias, and they could go directly to production from that. So, pretty interesting. That's how all the vessels are made and how a good part of their products are made. And so, for some of the more complex things, I'm sure they use CAD/CAM to handle a lot of that stuff. That's interesting too. My son is interested in robotics, and he belongs to a robotics group. And we've gone to some of the people's companies who sponsor their group, and to see what the CAD programs can do. Because a lot of the stuff that's done, they do robotic arms and things that go on Mars, and the accuracy and the precision that they're able to do it all automated is just amazing. It's really pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't know what program they use, but Autodesk, yeah, it's a good one. No, just one animated page, just like the little ads that you saw on the Star News. But, you know, hopefully something a little bit more interesting. I might have something that I can show from last semester. In fact, I'm almost sure that I do, but it's on my laptop. So I'll have to make copies of it, and then I can show you next Tuesday. We'll start with that. I'll show you some samples of student work.
When does this assignment due?
Probably not for 2 or 3 weeks. But as we're working on it, you know, when I'm done lecturing now, it will give you time then to work on it. That will give you lab time. What I've been doing for the past couple of weeks is trying to give you enough information and to get you up to speed so you feel comfortable doing something with the program.
So when we publish something that the viewer always has to have Flash Player to be able to view it
Mm-hmm.
right away?
That's the downside to Flash. Most browsers have the Flash player built in. So it's not an issue anymore. Where it does become an issue for some people, though, is accessibility. People with disabilities, they probably wouldn't be able to see any of this. Or even, I mean, clearly if you're blind, you can't see it, but if they had a reader, it's a device that goes over web pages and reads it to them. And that's where CSS has become really powerful. Because when you have the heading tags, the H tags, it can determine the emphasis. It doesn't necessarily make it louder, but, and I have not heard it myself, but I know that when you use an H1 tag, it's very strong, so that they know that, oh, this is this is the title of the article. And then it will jump maybe to an H3. Well, that H3 tag may be used for the body copy, and there's less emphasis. So now I know when the reader is reading it that this is the body or the content of the article. And maybe an H2 tag is used for the subheads or something like that. How it emphasizes, and it can't be by loudness or it would be shouting at you, you know, but I haven't heard them. I just know that that's what is done. But with this, you don't have any of that. So you eliminate a large group of people, but for him, he doesn't care. They're not going to be the one. They're not going to be his clients anyway.
So if you want to reach the general public,
Then Flash would not be the way to go. Too many limitations, too many restrictions. Although for a while, when Flash started, boy, everybody and their brother wanted to use it, and it's still used a lot. That's why I was hunting for banner ads